Thanks for having me, Hugo, Ray, and everybody here at St. Charles. Thank you. I know it's kind of a mixed audience. I'm guessing PTs and athletic trainers. In my career, I have found most PTs and athletic trainers don't really like strength and conditioning guys. But we do feed you a lot of business typically.
PTs and athletic trainers don't like each other.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, you know, over the years that I spent in Major League Baseball, what was really cool about it is every day mattered and everything that we did mattered because of the asset value in which you managed. So I always tell people, I said, I have very much in common with hedge fund managers in that we're valuing and managing high ticket assets. And that was what was really cool because we couldn't afford mistakes. So all the protocols that we put in place, all the testing measures that we put in place were meant to identify risk and then put together protocols to help reduce that risk. So every year when we'd start spring training, none of our athletes would be able to touch the field unless they went through what was a 60 to 75 minute assessment evaluation. So it was our way of saying, is this guy high risk, low risk, or moderate risk? And then we had a category that we called time bombs, which were guys that failed multiple risk categories, and we just knew that it wasn't if, it was when, and we had to kind of put some immediate triage care into play with these guys. So I know the audience here deals primarily, I'm guessing, with high school athletes, and I know the topic is the art of training like a pro, and they are very different audiences, but there's a lot of things that you can take from this and apply to that level. And talking to Ray and talking to Luke over time, the state of high school athletics is in a huge, it's in disarray because there's so many chefs in the kitchen, parents are micromanaging, coaches are getting involved with things they shouldn't be involved with, and there's just no straight line or linear communication going on, and it's causing, in my opinion, a lot of overuse injuries. And not to mention, in the private sector, of all these private teams and leagues that exist, money is causing a lot of issues as well, because a season that was typically 3 months long is now becoming 6, 8, 9, and even 12 months long. So I'm going to speak, and I'll probably have some more baseball references, just because that's primarily my background. But we're seeing pitchers, especially a rise in Tommy John and UCL injuries, and we sit back and sometimes we had to have a book come out called The Arm that tells us why this may be happening. But you can go to any baseball pitching facility starting this month, and you'll see pitching lessons going on for preparation for next season when these kids haven't even concluded the previous season. So it's just the recipe for overuse and disaster. And what I've seen in my career, it's been actually hard coming from the pro level down to the consumer level, because you're dealing with parents and you're dealing with coaches that, what we like to say, sometimes they just don't get it, because they're thinking more is better. I have some attorneys that bring their children to some of our facilities, and they're trying to manage the care of their child like they would a disposition, and it doesn't work like that. This is much different. You can't buy talent. Time doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get better, time on the job. So that's something that I've seen as a big issue at this level, and it's something that's definitely very concerning. And I think a lot of that has to do with a lack of education. That's like what I always go back to. But we also have to have audiences that are willing to listen as well. So that's our job as professionals. So as much as I am a strength and conditioning performance coach, speaker, I do all of that, I'm not a clang and bang kind of strength guy. I come from a more of an integrated approach where I worked very closely with our athletic trainers, and they did a lot of the acute care in terms of modality work, and then I jumped in and did a lot of the return to play physical rehab. And so we looked at this is a full integrated process, not athletic trainer versus strength coach versus ortho versus acupuncture, massage. It was so integrated that we all work together. So when I come out of that world and I look at what's going on now, it's disturbing in a lot of ways because it just doesn't make sense. So let's get into this. I had a link, but I'm going to pass through it. There it is. But I just want to talk a little bit about the trends of training today. And I'm not here by any means to kill any one, mode of training. I'm sure that there's people that run a great, gym class and they have a great strength program. But I'm just going to speak to the norms that are out there, right? So in terms of training, what are our options for the youth population that we see today? CrossFit is something that's out there. It's been out there. It's been surging for several years. Bigger, Faster, Stronger is a program that's been in schools for the past 20 or 30 years with minimal updates. The gym teacher, the guy that likes to work out, that's a guy, he might have played college football, and he takes care of our strength program. No matter what the sport, he's also, he's a gym teacher, he coaches wrestling, he does 9 different things, and he's also the strength coach, and that's great. You have Insanity and P90X. A quick put the DVD in, and there you go, and there's your strength program. There's 90 days of intensity. What so-and-so does. So we'll hear kids that say, I want to do what Roger Clemens does. I want to do, maybe that's a bad example, but I want to do what, Ray Lewis or any of these Derek Jeter does, right? But you're not Derek Jeter, so should you be doing what a fully matured body is doing at this time? Then you have, a new cardio training interval program in Orange Theory that's opening up around the country that says that they're the official sponsor of the New York Yankees, even though none of them have ever been in there. And that's where you go to train like an athlete, next to housewives in the morning. And then you have your $10 special where you can go to Planet Fitness, Crunch, Blink, or any other discounted gym option. So really, this is it. There are some specialty places that, again, focus on performance, but for the majority, this is what's available in regards to strength and conditioning today. So, with that being said, that's a lot of options. But I'm not really sold on all of them, because I think they're looking at everything from one perspective, right? How many of these models are integrated here, truly integrated? When we talk about the majority. Again, like I said, there's always going to be some outliers, but for the most part, these are just basically cookie cutter plans, cookie cutter approaches, and that's the option for the kids. So the athlete that's come in and has had reconstructive surgery, let's just say, of a shoulder, an elbow, or in the lower extremity, or, maybe dealing with some sort of plantar fascia issue, or may be coming off of an ACL, where does he go? When physical therapy ends, right? Or he's turned back over to his coaches, where do they go? We don't have a place for them. So there's this gaping hole right now what I call return to play. It's your PT prescription's expired, and your options on the other side of that continuum are here. What do we do, right? So that's what we have to talk about, and I think that's the role, because what I see, I try to solicit business to a lot of schools, and none of them seem to have any money. Taxes go up, they have no money, it's kind of a weird thing. But with that being said, we have to empower the trainers to maybe take a little bit more of an active role, and maybe because the trainers are already in there, and guys like Bray could renegotiate contracts and maybe get more money from the schools to add a strength program. But, the one thing I want to say in regards to those programs, and in my years of doing this, most of those programs are focused on volume and intensity. Okay? And that's oftentimes a recipe for disaster. If you do a lot of box jumps, you just took something that could be really good and turned it into something that could now become really bad. Right? Because that's volume, and we're trying to get more and more out of these youth bodies that are not prepared to handle it. And I don't care what anyone says, well, they got good mechanics. If they have good mechanics, they can pass that test. That's bullshit. I've been dealing with, sorry, I'm losing it now, but I've been dealing with kids for a lot of years, man, and if you're going to give them volume-oriented exercises, you're going to hurt them. They are not built for that. That's why we're breaking down as throwers. We're breaking down in all different sports. The volume is killing these kids. And look, I have social media addiction, much like most of the people in this room. I'll be the first to admit it. And I see what's going on in so many different, with so many different training facilities and and amongst like celebrity trainers and all this stuff. And this is what kids are seeing, right? All this crazy exercises. And those are the same exercises that they're looking at as, I'm going to use this to get me better, but that's actually what's going to get them hurt. So social media, when it comes to training, is something that is not really that advantageous. So again, I basically have this formula. So what's the problem, right? Volume, intensity, and inexperience equals injury. And for me, it's not sometimes, it's all the time. It's not if, it's when. And I've screened hundreds of pro athletes and hundreds of college athletes and hundreds of youth athletes. And you see so many similarities between them. Just ask an athlete to put their arms over their head and do a squat. You'll see the knees coming in, you'll see a torso collapse, you'll see one arm higher than the other, and then you're going to say, all right, let's get 135 on the bar. Right? It doesn't make any sense. So we got to start making sense, because we're not making sense anymore in this field. And I always said, listen, I wasn't that smart. I just had common sense. That's what I did with my athletes. But you'll get guys from Alex Rodriguez to Derek Jeter to Mariano Rivera, they can't do a squat. But the one thing that they understood was volume and intensity while training will wipe them out. Because they knew that their game volume and their practice volume was so high. So we were very strategic and planned and organized and detailed when it came to putting their programs together. So let's keep going here. Just kind of identifying some more things. But again, I see, look, what's the problem with this field of strength and conditioning and training? Athletic trainers, it's regulated. Physical therapy is a regulated field. Orthopedics is regulated. This is not. You could wake up one day and say, you know what? I hate IBM and I don't want to work there anymore. I was a former college soccer player. I want to coach athletes now. And you know what you do? You go online, or you see the NASM commercial on ESPN, and you go online and you buy your course, and 6 weeks later you're certified with no experience. But so that's one of the biggest issues in this field, is there's no regulation. From there, what works is not always what looks cool. I am the most boring coach in the world. I promise you. You'll watch me and you'll be like, hey, that's it? That's the show? Like, yeah, that's the show, man. If you can't stand and hold this position without going like this, you shouldn't be advanced. That's how boring I am. But I'm not trying to do something that looks cool just for sex appeal and sales. I'm trying to protect hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. That's the difference, right? Now these parents, this is how crazy some of them are. They're trying to get their kids a scholarship for $200,000. They're trying to get them to the pro contract. But they're not willing to compromise. Well, this guy's running with parachutes, and this guy's doing that, and this guy's doing that. Your kid's not there yet, man. He's not there yet. He hasn't been able to establish the basics. We're in a volume-driven society, ask the parents. So this is another problem. Like I said, volume will kill these kids, right? Orthopedics, PTs, athletic trainers need to get involved. You guys are probably the smartest people at the youth level in terms of who these youth athletes are around every day. You got to start using that and educating them and trying to steer them in a little bit different direction. And one of the things that I always, I guess, wondered about is, especially with high school coaches, right? I think a lot of these guys don't realize the impact that they have on kids, that how much they can actually help them if they invested. I'd like to see more of that at the athletic training level at the high school. You guys are with these kids every day, completely over leveraged, I understand. But if there's a way to maybe leverage some of the assets that a St. Charles Hospital has, or a professional PT, or whoever you guys work for, and get some more materials and more education into the schools, that could only help, because it's like I said, it's in bad standing. Coaches are trying to team build in the weight room. Mike's one of our coaches, and he's here. And we had an issue last year with St. Anthony's High School, right? Private school, beautiful. Dana, come in, speak to all the parents, get them on board about training, and teach the baseball players about how to train properly. So here we go. We tell them, the parents love it. And then we get 5 or 6 kids that want to train with us and get the right programming, right? And then all of a sudden, they say, oh, we can't come Tuesday night, we can't come Thursday night because we have weightlifting at school. I said, well, that wasn't a part of the original agreement or plan. But what we started to see was, the coach was trying to build the team in the weight room with no instructor that was qualified to do so. So these kids were doing squats, deadlifts, cleans, and after they've already fatigued from doing all these complex power movements, which you would never put that many in a row if you knew what you're doing, and then saying go sprint afterwards, and they were doing agility drills. So you're sending kids out to play a sport that's a power sport, quick burst, and off the gas, to go basically power train with volume and intensity, and then go condition through agility work while they're already fatigued from the previous volume and intensity that they were just exposed to. And we're going to sit back and say we're team building. The last thing you're doing is team building, you're team hurting, you're dismantling your own team. And these kids, what happens? They get hurt from the volume and the intensity, and that's why I think team building in the weight room is not going to work anymore. And I just want to say this, I think we're dealing with a completely different athlete today than when some of us and some of the older generation were participating in high school athletics. This is a completely different animal. Money drives this whole thing, and it's insane. Kids they created in baseball now this thing called a PO, pitcher only. They don't do anything else but pitch, and they'll pitch Monday night for one team and go pitch Wednesday night for another team, and Wednesday night's coach knows nothing about what happened Monday night. And then there's another game on Friday, so you're getting people to sit down, to pitch on multiple nights, high volume, no recovery, and then all of a sudden they're, get injections from Luga, right? That's a problem, right? And the last thing for me is non-synergistic programming. Like I started this whole thing out, we as health professionals are a team. It's not me versus you, but I'll tell you, I think a lot of strength coaches do a piss poor job of representing themselves like professionals and they can't even speak the language of a PT, of an ATC, or an ortho. That's a huge problem. But again, let's talk about the typical strength coach. It's just a typical meathead kind of guy. That's the reality. And we need to get away from that, and we need to start speaking a similar language where I can take a cue from someone like Luga, or one of you guys, and I can work with that. And I don't see that happening at the level I would like to see. So how do I do it, right? I've been blabbing about everybody else. Let me just give you a little bit more insight as to kind of how we do it and what my system is and what my philosophy is, right? So evaluation and assessment drives program design. I have this rule, right? If I haven't evaluated you and I haven't assessed you, I can't program for you. I can give you something basic, but that basic thing might not help you. And the world I come from is all about quantifiable gains and everything's got to be metric driven. That's where I come. I can't just be like, hey, looks like it's getting better today. That doesn't mean anything. That's a completely useless statement, right? That's like the business that's losing money. You say, how are you doing? We're doing all right. We're doing all right. All right, good means jack, where I come from, okay? So we evaluate and we assess. Everything from goniometric measurement, postural assessment, manual muscle testing, and we get a good, clear snapshot. We get video. We see how they move. We take that information, and then we create a planned training process. And that's just it's a process, right? So if you're, whatever sport you play, we're looking at your whole calendar year. And we're going to consider games. We're going to consider practices. We're going to consider off weeks. We're going to consider all of these things when we're putting that plan together. So I say plan by workout, month, and start of the season. Chart the progress. How many times are we just like, all right, guys, we're just using one metric in the weight room. How much weight am I lifting? That's all we're using as a typical metric. That's a problem. Engage the family. We need to engage the families too. Yeah, that's in the private sector, we're able to do that. Bring the parents in and talk to them about the actual plan for these kids and let education be the driver. Right? People want to learn. They want to be engaged. They want to be taught. It's just a matter of everything today, if you can't capture it in a slide like this on like an Instagram feed and you can't deliver it that quickly, people get bored, right? That's why I hate speaking after lunch. But anyway, that's the reality. So we got to let education drive our process for these kids. So let's evaluate, and this is my system, very simple. Like I said, evaluate program, reevaluate program. Every workout, we're evaluating our programs and the progress, and we may make adjustments to the actual program that we write based on the kid, not just something we put on a whiteboard. okay, which I'll see in a lot of high schools. And that's something I just want to go back one more step. Don't tell Don any of this about St. Anthony's. But we had seen them put just this workout on a whiteboard. And it was just like there was no progression to the workout. It was as if the coach said, you know what are my favorite 10 exercises? I'm going to put that for day A, and I'm going to put my other favorite 10 on day B, and that's our workout. And that's just not good enough, all right? So one of the certification groups that I actually do like, I like the NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine. Again, it was started by Mike Clark, a physical therapist-driven model, which I like, but they were the first group that I saw that actually had a easy-to-digest recipe on how to train people. Whether it's an athlete, whether it's the general pop, someone coming off of a hip replacement, whatever it is, right? But they created this stairway. And I've used this my whole career, and as a young guy, I needed some system to work off of, and this is was the basis of everything I did in regards to strength training. And it was about saying, I got to create a base of stability before I can put strength into a body. And if I dare decide to put power into the body before stabilization and strength, I'm going to have a problem. Now, if we look at this here, right? Let me see if I have this. Okay. It's not going to work. But if we look at this stairway, I call it the stairway to heaven here, right? Most programs start between strength and power, which is maximal strength and hypertrophy. Go to any gym on a Monday, and you're going to see every bench press rack is taken, focused on hypertrophy and maximal strength. Okay? And we live in this zone. That's the sexy zone, right? This zone here is what we oftentimes view as like a rehab zone. But that's totally not true, right? Because we want to build this muscular endurance in that phase. We want to make sure that someone can get in an athletic position and hold it, right? Before we just say, here's 45 pounds, now keep squatting up and down as much as you can. And that's a problem. So we use this is like what I call it our foundations phase, where we're working with body weight. We're working with slow tempos. We're focusing on postural enhancement and development. We're focusing on unilateral strength and balance and coordination, and we're putting all that together. How many kids today can skip, march, hop, jump, and maintain their balance and put themselves in a good athletic position time after time? Not a ton. Now, how many can do that under fatigue in a very controlled setting? Okay, I want you to do shuffles for 45 seconds, and I don't want to see your posture change for 45 seconds. By the way, you're a soccer player, you should be able to do that. Right? If we can't pass those basic tests, then why are we cleaning, snatching, deadlifting, or doing anything of that such? I don't care how good of a coach you are. I've been doing this for over 15 years. I couldn't do it. Right? So, it's a false expectation. And that's why we can't fall in love with what's cool and what's sexy. We got to fall in love with what works. And I'm telling you, this works. Any athlete, whether it's Alex Rodriguez that goes down with a hip issue, you know where you're bringing them back to? You're not bringing them back to, aggressive powerlifting. You're bringing them right back down to the bottom. Standing on one leg, balancing, single leg squats, slow eccentric tempos, and that's where you're starting. Then there's some guys at the pro level that have chronic pain. Same thing. You're bringing them back down the stairs. You're not focusing on power and strength because they already have that, and you're going back to build the stability component. Okay? So, this is actually what I do. So, everyone that we deal with starts on a table. We'll use heat, we'll use trigger points, we'll focus on the myofascial work, we'll make sure that the body is prepared for the work that's to come, right? So, I'm breaking up any sort of adhesions, trigger points, knots, anything that exists. I'm using all my different tools to do that. Then from there, I'm focusing on core development, which isn't just crunching. We focus on flexion, extension, rotation, stability, and primal movement like rolling patterns and trolling and different things like that. So that's what makes up our core development. So from there, we're going to pick our correctives based on our assessment. So if someone doesn't have internal hip rotation on the right side or the left, in this module, we're going to focus on getting them internal hip rotation. But how many people even know if their athletes need internal hip rotation, right? So I'm behind a batting cage a few years ago, and I always tell the story whenever I speak. And I'm in Oakland, and I'm watching Melky Cabrera hit. And he's hitting, and he's not getting his backside through. And the hitting coach, Kevin Long, at the time says, Melky, get your backside through. You're using all arms. Over and over and over again, he couldn't do it. Then he switches to the other side, no problem, because he was a switch hitter. He gets the backside through. Power's increased and everything. So I said, Kevin, when he's done, send him in. I want to measure. So I pull out a tool that most strength coaches would have no idea what it is. It's called a goniometer. And I measure him, and he has a 15 to 20 degree differential between right and left. So this coach could coach the hell out of him to get the backside through. It's not going. So then we have to put together a corrective strategy that's focused on bringing about that result, right? So that's what we do. If you don't have external shoulder rotation as a pitcher or an overhead thrower, or you don't have enough internal shoulder rotation or total motion, you're going to have a problem. Where's the scap sitting? Is one winging? What's the orientation of that? What's the orientation of the hips? When you just stand there, is the left foot out? Is the right foot out? Are you leaning to one side? Is one knee turned one way and the other knee is turned the other? Simple stuff. Are you leaning forward? Then we go into dynamic movement 5. We're focused on calisthenics, footwork, hopping, skipping, basic plyos, and dynamic movement. From there, we focus on basic speed development mechanics, linear, lateral, and multi-directional. So we can't just say, okay, shuffle, and the athlete's clanging his feet together, he lost his center of balance. It's about teaching them how to move, working those movement mechanics. And if we can do that, we're going to make that athlete, again, more effective and more efficient. Then we go into our strength program based on that triad or the stairway I just told you. We condition them and we recover. So most people, right, they think of conditioning as this like 45-minute event. I look at it as 10 minutes or less. In all my years with the Yankees, they never conditioned more than 10 minutes. Because I consider ground contact and volume as a major contributor, to issues with these athletes. So I cut our foot contacts way back. I used heart rate, I used fan bikes, I used rowers, I used different things to spike heart rate, and I tried to spike and drop, and calculate drop rates to see how fast they drop to assess overall conditioning. Heart rates are hard to find these days in traditional settings of strength and conditioning, okay? And then you'll see number 6, right? That's strength program. If you could see, we did 5 other steps before we actually got to the strength portion. But most programs are built around the strength portion. I looked at it, I had to do all this preparatory work in order to maximize my strength session, which was only which wasn't that big of a percentage of the workout. Okay? So, and this number 6, it would the volume that we did would change based on where we are in the season. The off season is a little bit higher, and as the season goes on, it shrinks. Okay, so you have to have a changing volume schematic based on how much game volume and how much practice volume is. That's going up, your training volume should be going down, but your recovery volume should be going up, right? Which goes into a whole nother category, right? This is a huge topic right now in professional sports, and I know Ray's making a push at the youth level to get recovery as something that people could actually wrap their hands and heads around, because it's essential. How many teams train? A lot of teams now are doing training, but most teams are not recovering. And some teams now are using yoga to recover. Yoga's hard, man. Yoga's not easy. So for me, I prefer to use different things like the Normatec boots, hot therapies, cold therapies, massage, and all different other modalities that we can use that can kind of let the athlete just unwind and chill, which I think is huge. All right? I don't know if you can read this, but so what does the future look like, right? Volume will cost many athletes their current and future sporting careers. I believe that to be completely true. I'm seeing so many kids that are getting Tommy John surgery left and right, 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old. This is such an important topic because these kids they're not going to make it to that scholarship that they desire. Training and prevention needs to become part of the mandated practice and prep curriculum using qualified programming. We need to arm our coaches and we need to arm our districts with these programs. They're not going to go find them themselves, and when they do, they're going to come in with Men's Health magazine. That was another one that I forgot to put on there. That has some of the hottest new workouts. Trends, injury elevation, right? So training principles to drive optimal performance. Unless parents are educated by professionals, they will fall victim to volume-driven coaching. So we have to educate the parents, guys, and it's just an important part of what we do. So I'm going to finish up here with keep it simple. This is what I lived by, and I feel like people are like, man, what do you do? That's so amazing. But I follow the basics, man. I follow posture, range of motion, stability, and baseline conditioning. And I always just is an athlete conditioned enough? Kids today are so lazy. They just sit around and they veg, and they just, and that's all they do. So the conditioning level and the ability of these athletes to recover and heal is not as good as it once was. So for us, just start with a good conditioning plan. Limit the ground contacts. Focus on their posture. Head position plays a big role in overall posture. If you don't have a stable core, you're going to get a forward lean. If you get a forward lean, your deceleration is going to be affected. Your ability to change direction is going to be affected. Movement compensations are going to take place. Right? Stability, range of motion. Then we focus on speed, strength, power, and intervals. Okay? So, real simple stuff. That's kind of my tagline. Here's my information if you guys need anything. But again, this field, what I have found through the years, it's really not that complicated. It's definitely oversold, and people make it out to be like it's this secret recipe, and everyone's trying to recreate theories and theories upon theories upon theories. And then there's a lot of gimmicks. So you got to sort through the crap, and you got to use education and just basic validated protocols to drive everything you do, right? So that's all I have. I don't know how you guys are doing questions or if.